Okay, so I have just done the dorkiest thing that I've ever done as a dorky runner. And that is, I was curious about this Puma study with the Fast-R 3. When that shoe came out, it said 3.1%, 3.15% more efficient. I'm like, exactly more efficient than what? What were the parameters of this test? You know, how does this exactly work? What are they talking about? So I actually printed out their report. I read the whole thing. I highlighted it. I took notes so that you don't have to. So I'm going to break down this Puma study that explains the efficiency gains of the Fast-R Nitro Elite 3. So we'll see if anybody watches this video or cares. But basically this all starts with advanced footwear technology that they abbreviate as AFT throughout the whole project there. And what they're talking about initially is the Vaporfly 4%, where Nike, when they came out with that shoe, they proved a 4% improvement in running economy as opposed to just a normal running shoe. And what makes a super shoe is the type of foam that's in it, the carbon fiber plate, and the design, the shape of the actual midsole. So what Adidas actually did for this, which I'll give them some credit for, well, not Adidas, what Puma did for this, which I'll give them some credit for, is they did compare their shoe against the current top competitors. They compared it against the Nike Alphafly 3. They compared it against the Adidas Pro Evo 1, which I don't have because it's $500 and impossible to get, and I don't want to spend that much money on a shoe, and against the Fast-R 2. So Puma, what they basically did was they took measurements of people running in the Fast-R 2, 10 different people. They mapped a lot of the biomechanical data, and then they designed the Fast-R 3 virtually to try and optimize all of those things. So it was completely designed and prototyped in a computer to try and optimize everything. So that's basically what they did in creating the shoe. So let's get into the stuff a little bit. So their definition of a super shoe has a modern, compliant, and resilient foam with an embedded carbon fiber plate. When Nike first came out with the Vaporfly, they were the only shoe company doing that. But now all brands have a carbon-plated race shoe, basically. And they're all just changing around how do we reduce the weight, increasing longitudinal bending stiffness, which is a carbon plate. How stiff is the plate? Compliance and resilience of the modern foams, a taller stack height, bringing it up to the legal limit, and a pronounced rocker. So basically those are the ingredients to make a super shoe cake, and each brand is tweaking those things differently to try and optimize it. And what's been shown in other tests that have been done is that running in any super shoe can increase your running economy by 3 to 4% compared to a non-super shoe, a shoe without a carbon plate, without the most recent good type of foam in there. All shoes can pull that increase over a regular shoe, but really compared to each other there's not that much difference. They showed that from the AP3 at Adios Pro 3 to the Adios Pro 4, the Adios Pro 4 has a 1.1 to 1.5% improved running economy, so not really that much of a difference. And between the shoes that they compared, I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, they found that the Alphafly, the Pro Evo 1, and the Fast-R 2, all the runners that ran in them had pretty much similar results, but across the board, everybody performed better in the Fast-R 3. All right, so who's ready for some nerdy words? Puma applied topology optimization to identify optimal foam placement, material properties, carbon fiber layering, and overall geometry to minimize weight, maximize energy storage and return, and achieve the desired carbon plate stiffness. So that's what they were doing inside the computer. So who are the runners that took part in this study? That was something that I was actually pretty interested in because, how does that compare to a normal person? It doesn't really, because they didn't have normal people running the shoe. They had trained athletes running the shoe. They're not like elite runners, but they're very good runners. They only had 15 people participate in this study too, so it's not a massive study. They didn't take into account foot strike or anything like that. I assume most of these people are probably midfoot or forefoot strikers, just because if you're a better runner, that's what you tend to be. But that's not mentioned anywhere in the study. But basically there was 11 males and 4 females. The males' ages were 31 plus or minus 6 years. So everybody's in their kind of mid-20s to late 30s. And this is the annoying thing for me too, is everything's in metric. I'm in America and we don't understand metric. I know the whole world uses it, but for me, I got to convert it in my brain. I was using Google to do these conversions. But the average height of the males taking part in this was 1.78 meters. plus or minus 0.04 meters. Which in English for me is about 5'5" to 5'8", somewhere in that range. So average height for a male, but not tall. And the weight being 67.5 kilograms, plus or minus 4.8 kilograms, which is basically about 148 pounds, plus or minus 10 pounds. So you're looking at runners around 130 to maybe 160 pounds. So again, pretty light runner, normal size person, 5 foot something, 100 something pounds. For the 4 females in the study, the average age was 28.3, plus or minus 3 or 4 years, so about 25 to 31 years old. Their height was 1.66 meters, plus or minus 0.01 meters, which is basically in English about 5'2" to 5'6". So again, average height for a female, not tall. And their weight was 59.1 kilograms, plus or minus 2.2, so about 130 pounds plus or minus 5 pounds, so about 125 to 135 pounds. So basically average size people, average weight, nobody high in weight, nobody ridiculously low, kind of a average size person. But the other thing, in order to qualify for this study, all of the females had to recently run a 5K in less than 21 minutes and wear a size 8 shoe. So they had fast females that wear a size 8 shoe, or 19 minutes for the males. So sub 19, that's pretty fast for a 5K. So that's not just your average runner, that's a trained runner. And they have to be a size 9 or a size 11. So I don't know if they put a survey out there, anybody meet these qualifications, and these are the people who showed up. But we had some, pretty fast runners, not elites, but definitely not just your back of the pack average type of person. And what they actually did for the test is they had everybody run in all 4 shoes in a random order twice. So they repeated running in each shoe for 5 minutes with 5 minutes rest in between each attempt running in the shoe. And the speed that the treadmill was set at was based on their recent 5K results. So the men were running at 16 kilometers per hour, back to Google, about 9.94 miles per hour. And a couple men were running at about 8.7 miles per hour. So about 9 to 10 miles an hour, which again is pretty fast. Not, marathon Kipchoge speed, but pretty fast running. For the females, they were running at about 14 kilometers per hour, or 12.9, so about 8.7 or about 8 miles per hour for the females. And what they did too is they had everybody wear a face piece that's basically measuring how much oxygen they're using and how much carbon dioxide they're outputting during that time. That's how they're measuring the running economy. They also had like pressure sensors that are measuring how much time they spend on the ground, their cadence, so they're measuring those things as well. But they're looking at the rates of oxygen uptake and carbon dioxide production, measuring ground contact time, step frequency, vertical ground reaction force, and braking and propelling impulses. One thing that's important to remember too is that Puma paid for this study. So I'm not saying that it's biased, but they are the ones that funded this. But basically what they found was no significant difference between the other 3 shoes. Everyone performed pretty much the same in all 3, but everybody performed better in the Fast-R 3, everyone in this test. The average was 3.15% better than the Fast-R 2. So that's the thing that they're actually advertising on their website, is that this shoe has 3.15% better running economy than the Fast-R 2, so their own product. But it's kind of interesting to me that that's the number they're using, because it actually is better with all the other shoes. The average was 3.62% better than runners in the Alpha Fly 3 and 3.54 better than in the Pro Evo 1. So everybody ran better in the Fast-R 3 compared to the Fast-R 2, but their running economy was even better than that 3.15 in the Alpha Fly and the Pro Evo 1. They also found that the Fast-R 3 had a longer ground contact time, and braking and propelling forces were larger. So that's kind of what was leading to that efficiency. It was staying on the ground longer and doing a better job of absorbing impact and giving it back, having stronger energy return. One runner had a 4% difference between the Pro Evo and the FR2. So that was an outlier in the study. So what they were showing there is that some runners might benefit more from a specific advanced footwear technology shoe. So that's something that I was kind of thinking with this whole thing is, okay, in the runners in this study, it showed improved economy, but does this apply across the board? This study can't definitively say that because it's only 15 people and they're all pretty much the same type of runner. They're all around the same age, the same weight. They're running the same speed. I assume they're the same type of forefoot or midfoot striker, but again, that's not part of the study that they mentioned. But basically, their conclusion here is actually kind of interesting, where they're saying that there's a great potential for you to using data-driven computational design to optimize advanced footwear technology for an individual runner. So what they did when they were designing the Fast-R 3 was map people's running style and kind of design it to optimize that running style. Potentially they could do this for every person. If they brought you into a lab, had you run on the treadmill, measured where you're striking, the forces that you're putting into the shoe, they could tweak that midsole firmness to work, be firmer for a heavier runner, be softer for a lighter runner. They could move the foam to the optimal place for your landing, but that's never going to happen. Commercially, that's not going to make sense. They're not going to design shoes that can do that for each person. I wonder what they would charge to make you a custom shoe. That just wouldn't make sense financially for a brand to do that, but potentially they have the ability to do that. Whether that'll ever be scalable, I don't know. But something that I would like to see is maybe they take that data and give us 3 versions of a shoe. ASICS has kind of done this already with the Metaspeed Sky and the Metaspeed Edge, where they said some runners are stride runners, some runners are cadence runners. Let's kind of optimize the plate placement of the shoe to work better for that type of runner. They could do that with these foams as well. If they said, okay, this is the Adios Pro 4 for runners that are over 180 pounds, and we're firming up that midsole compound, make it not too soft. And this is the Adios Pro 4 Lite, for runners that are 120 to 150 pounds. They could definitely tweak it to do that. Will brands actually do this in the future? I don't know. The other key thing of note in this study is that running economy gains don't translate to running performance exactly 1-to-1. So that's important. So when they say 3.15% improved running economy, doesn't mean you're going to run 3.15% faster. The part of that I actually found interesting is there's an increasing metabolic cost to overcome air resistance, which increases disproportionately with increasing speed. So what that actually means is the faster you run, the less this is going to help you. Because you're overcoming more air resistance and you're working harder to run that speed. So the gains in economy actually decrease the faster you get. I'm going to show a chart from their actual paper here that shows like some marathon times, what they would expect that 3.15% to do for you. So basically, the slower you run a marathon, the more that's going to help you shave off your time. But the faster you're running, the less time savings you're actually going to get. Some other things that I think kind of skew these test results a little bit is they're running a controlled environment. They're running on a treadmill inside, there's no wind. They're only running for 5 minutes at a time in each shoe. So that's one thing to be efficient in a shoe for 5 minutes, but now running that shoe for 2 hours and see how efficient you are once you're tired. So that's not something that they tested in this study, is does the shoe remain efficient 3 hours into a marathon, 4 hours into a marathon? Is one of the shoes that's more efficient for 5 minutes become less efficient later in a race? That's not something that they tested. Also, all the shoes that they were using are pretty much brand new. They all had 40 kilometers on them or less. So they also are not testing how well these shoes will perform after a lot of use. If you have 100 miles on the shoe, is the efficiency of the shoe going to change from one to the other? Although I guess that's kind of less important, because if people have a race, a lot of times they're buying a new shoe anyway. So you're probably using a fresh shoe for an A race. But that's another thing where they're not measuring the durability and how that those gains in economy actually last over time as the shoe degrades. So the conclusion of the study is that computational design analysis could revolutionize the running shoe design and offer potential for further improvements and personalized advanced footwear technology models. So that's the thing that I think is actually the most interesting about this, where they're showing we can map data from runners and kind of customize a shoe that's going to be efficient. If they could find a way to scale that, make it cost effective, that they could, like I said, say like, this is your optimal super shoe for a heel striker. This is your optimal super shoe for someone between this weight efficiency. As I've kind of mentioned before, if you look at cars, they have different shocks, they have different suspensions, they have different tires depending on the size of the car. If it's a pickup truck, it has to have bigger, more robust shocks to support all that weight. It's also towing. There's more tasks that it's trying to do. There's additional weight going in the bed. So you need a lot stronger suspension on a pickup truck than you do on a Honda Civic. So if they're building all these super shoes specifically for those smaller, lighter people, someone like me who's over 200 pounds, when I run in these really soft, bouncy super shoes, I just crush them. The suspension can't take the weight that I'm putting into them. So what does this study actually mean to you? Will you be 3.15% more efficient running in the Puma Fast-R Nitro Elite 3? I hate how all these shoes have such long names now. The answer is maybe. That's the criteria from their study, those 15 runners who are kind of average size, average weight, running around 8 to 10 miles per hour. If that's you, if that's where you're running a marathon, you could expect to have a similar gain to those runners. But again, it's a pretty small sample size. They didn't test it on larger runners. They didn't test it on people running slower. They didn't test it on people running faster. So I still think that shoes are very personal. You know, what's going to work best for you might not be best for me, and vice versa. Unfortunately, you just got to try them all out and see what works for you. Or you can watch more of these videos on YouTube and see, you know, find somebody who's similar to you. If you agree with their opinions on shoes, hopefully that's going to help you make an informed decision. If something works for me and you have a similar preferences to me, then you might think, okay, this shoe might work for me as well. So if you made it this far, congratulations. I didn't put you to sleep with my Super Shoe TED Talk. So please leave a like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I will see you in the next video.